Hi, Mr. Wright here, and welcome to this film in which I'll talk you through my predictions for Friday's Edexcel IGCSE Paper 2H, the second of the higher tier papers for November 2025. So please hit like if you've just taken your Paper 1H and you are sitting your Paper 2H on Friday. Hit like so I know you're watching, and hit like because it helps YouTube appreciate that this film is worth YouTube spreading to other students. Now, before I take you through my predictions, just a mention of Thursday evening's revision session. This is perfect for you if you are aiming to get a grade 7, 8, or 9, because on Thursday evening, 6 p.m. UK time, 6 p.m. GMT, for 90 minutes, we will work through grade 7, 8, and 9 questions on the topics which I am predicting will come up for you on Friday. So this is perfect exam prep for you for Friday if you're going for one of those top grades, a grade 7, 8, or 9. You can scan the QR code, which is on the screen now. You can click on the link in the description after you've watched these predictions and register to come along to that. 90 minutes of Mr. Wright the night before your paper 2. Right, now let's get on with the predictions. Right, now I've split my predictions into 3 groups, and these are the topics which I predict will come up in the first half of your paper on Friday. Now, first of all, linear equations. Now, we've had a linear equation with fractions, but we haven't had linear equations with brackets or linear equations with unknowns on both sides, so I reckon they're going to show. We haven't had questions involving the product of primes, writing numbers as product of primes. You can use the fact button on your calculator for that, or the format button on the new style calculators. And we haven't had any questions asking you to work out HCFs and LCMs. Transformations, I'm pretty sure we haven't had any enlargements, any rotations, any translations, or any reflections. Now, percentages. We had a reverse percentage change. We haven't had any forward changes, multiply by 1 point the increase, or 0 point what's left. We haven't had any repeated changes, any compound interest, any depreciation, and we haven't had any questions on percentage profit, percentage loss, that sort of thing. Now, sequences. I'm expecting a straightforward question on sequences to be in the first half of the paper, and later on I'll tell you what I'm expecting in the last third of the paper, because I think sequences will appear there too. Angles and parallel lines, haven't seen any questions on those, or Venn diagrams. Sometimes there's a harder question on Venn diagrams, and sometimes there's a straightforward one where you simply need to know your set notation. Now, we've had an expanding 3 expressions. It was something like 2x and then a bracket and then a bracket. What we haven't had is just straightforward expanding 2 brackets. I'm expecting that in the first half of the paper, as well as standard form. And lastly, for this section, simultaneous equations. Only linear simultaneous equations, though, because we've already had a question, I think it was the last one on the paper, that required you to solve 2 equations simultaneously when one was quadratic. So I'm expecting a more straightforward pair of linear simultaneous equations. And if I were solving those, I would get the x's equal and then subtract. Okay, so here are the topics that I think are going to come up in the middle of Friday's paper. Okay, we haven't yet seen a question on converting recurring decimals to fractions. They come up most years. I'm expecting to see one tomorrow. Histograms, they come up most years. I'm expecting to see a question on histograms tomorrow. Now, bounds. We've had an easy question on bounds, but we haven't had a more complex question where there's an expression maybe involving a fraction and you have to find the highest possible value or the lowest possible value of an expression. Similarly, indices. We've had one question on indices, but we haven't had anything involving fractional indices or negative indices. So I'm expecting that on Friday. Cones and spheres. I haven't seen anything on surface area and volumes of cones and spheres. Graphical inequalities, again, where you have to shade either side of one side of a line and you end up with a region R. I haven't seen any of those questions. Now, cumulative frequency. There was a question on finding the interquartile range, but nothing on a cumulative frequency graph, nothing on finding the median. And I reckon, therefore, there'll be a question on plotting a cumulative frequency graph, finding the median, and then using your graph to find a probability or the number of people who have a certain score over whatever, or that sort of thing. So those are the topics that I'm expecting to come up in the middle of your paper. Right. The final third of the paper, what do I think is going to come up? But before we look at those topics on the final third of the paper, let me remind you about my live revision session on Thursday evening. The reason I'm so keen on telling you about this is that I really think it could make the difference to you. We will be going through past paper questions on these predicted topics and past paper questions of a grade 7, 8, and 9 level. Now, last year, we managed to go through some questions the night before the exam, and pretty much exactly the same question came up the next day. So I would urge you to come, if you possibly can, 6 p.m. on Thursday evening. There's the link on the QR code, and the link is also in the description. And also throughout the sessions, throughout the session, I will throw in some exam technique pointers for you and some mindset pointers for you to help you do your very best on Friday's paper. Right, the final third. Here are my predicted topics. Okay, the final third of the paper. Right, we haven't had any questions on algebraic proof yet. I feel sure I'm expecting one of those. Circle theorems is quite a large topic. Often it comes up on both papers, hasn't come up at all yet. Now, there are some more straightforward circle theorems, and then there are some harder ones. People often find the alternate segment theorem tricky and the intersecting chords theorem tricky too. And the intersecting chords theorem is an interesting one because it is on the IGCSE syllabus, but not on the standard GCSE syllabus, so it often comes up. Differentiation is another example of a topic which isn't on many GCSE syllabuses. It tends to come up at least once every year in IGCSE, hasn't come up yet. Now, we might be dealing with a differentiation question involving curves, perhaps finding stationary points, or finding the gradient of a curve at a certain point, or finding where the curve has a certain gradient, or we might be dealing with kinematics. We might be dealing with displacement, velocity, and acceleration. Okay, but I'm expecting differentiation to be there. Functions, nothing on functions yet. Now, sometimes questions on functions are relatively straightforward, find f of 3, and sometimes function questions can be very much more complex, finding the inverse function, especially where completing the square is required. Also interesting on functions is thinking about the domain and the range of functions. Similarity, especially questions where we're looking at similar solids, and I've got a table method for solving those. I'll show you on Thursday evening. Proportion, proportion. Fish sign equals find k, use k. We haven't had a proportion question yet. And sequences. I reckon that there will be a tough sequence question in the final third of the paper, probably involving the sum of the sequence, probably involving finding the sum of the sequence, a certain number of terms of the sequence perhaps, or perhaps when you're given the sum of the sequence and you have to find out some more details of the sequence, the first term, the common difference, that sort of thing. And sometimes those sequence questions can involve several different stages and can really be quite testing. Now, before you go, 2 topics which I also have not mentioned, but still I have in the back of my mind for Friday's paper. So the 2 topics which I have in mind are indices and bases. Sometimes in the final third of the paper, there's a very complex question involving writing all the numbers involved in a complex expression to a certain base and using your rules of indices. And the second topic, which I think is bound to show, is that of compound measures, distance, speed, time problems, mass, density, volume problems, that sort of thing. Right, so that ends my predictions for your paper 2 on Friday. Good luck on Friday. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you think of my predictions. Tell me if I've gone right or wrong. You sat the paper today. I didn't. What do you think will come up on Friday? And if you possibly can, I would urge you to come to my live revision session on Thursday evening. Right, good luck on Friday. Thanks for watching. See you in the next film.